ॐ नमः श्रीयतिराजाय विवेकानन्दसूरये सच्चित्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे. So we begin our Raj Yoga class. Last time, because of Kalpataru Day, we could not have our Raj Yoga class. So I'll go back to the previous discussion where Swamiji, before he started discussing the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, he makes one fact very clear, that every aspirant who wants to practice yoga has to remember one thing, that the state which he aspires to reach, whether you call it moksha or whether you call it God or whether you call that state as heaven or Father in heaven, reaching the Father in heaven. So according to different religions, different conceptions of the goal may be there. But it is the uh, same type of conception, only put in different forms. That's all. Yes. Yeah. I had to mute some participants. They forgot to switch off their audio. Anyway, so the idea of going back to the state, Swami Vivekananda, to satisfy all the people, whether they are atheists or rationalists or followers of religion or followers of any religion for that matter, he wants to make one point clear, that yoga is a neutral pathway. Anybody who believes in logic, who believes in rationality, can follow this path. So yoga never tells you to give up reason. It, in fact, was the first attempt made by a spiritual leader to show that religion can be practiced on using scientific principles. The principles of science which were glorified in the age when Swami Vivekananda wrote this book, Raj Yoga, and gave it to the West as a gift. He knew that he has to speak in the language of science and speak in the language of experimental verification of truth, not just tell people to just believe or believe in certain dogmas or some kind of religious scripture. He doesn't say, he says even Patanjali asks you to accept only if it can satisfy your reason and if it can convince you that the goal of yoga is not only achievable but is most desirable. Otherwise, why will a person waste their life going after a pursuit if he doesn't think it is real? That which we think is real absorbs our whole attention. That is a golden rule we have to follow in any pursuit. Suppose, to take a very gross example, suppose my goal in life, somehow I have been brainwashed by society around me or my teachers, my peers, my friends. Unfortunately, if I have been brainwashed to think that making money or becoming a billionaire is the only goal of life. There cannot be a higher goal than that. If I am convinced of that, now that goal becomes so real to me that all other goals, even if it is offered to you, even if somebody comes and tells you that I am giving you a rational explanation why this cannot be the goal, he says, you just don't bother me. I have decided this is my goal. I think this is true. There may not be any basis for his thinking. But if he has taken a decision that I will make wealth creation as the goal of my life and I'm not going to listen, if he has taken a determined view, then it is hopeless to convince him. If he is open to discussion, if he is open to the idea of experimental verification, just as a scientist will never say my method is the best. If some other scientist comes, there's so much of openness in the methods of science. When some superior scientist comes and says, I have found a better way or I have found a better truth, and he demonstrates, giving all the proof of the hypothesis which he proposes, then the whole scientific community agrees with him. They don't take time to discard the old idea and take up this new idea, because it is based on sound ex- experiment and verification principle. You experiment, you first rationalize, you give a reason for your hypothesis, and then the whole world will accept it as truth. So that is what science has done. It has cleared many cobwebs from religion. Religion, the lot of cobwebs had developed in the field of religion, and that was causing a lot of uh, uncertainty, quarrels in the name of religion. So Patanjali's yoga came as a refreshing, rational approach, scientific approach to religion. And Swami Vivekananda, since he was speaking in the West, he wanted to leave behind a book known as Raj Yoga for Western audiences who were glorifying the methods of science, and they were right in doing so. So he said, let me leave behind a scientific approach to religion, and that is the result is Raj Yoga. So he says, let us now describe that since everything, let us try to understand the goal of Raj Yoga. Why the goal of Raj Yoga to become one with the Purusha is our goal. Why not be one with Prakriti? Since he has divided according to the reason, we see two things. One is the witness self with the consciousness, and the other is uh, the non-witness or the Prakriti, which plays out the whole drama of life. Both are true, both are real. According to Patanjali, both are real. He doesn't say that you accept, unlike some of the higher schools of Vedanta, which say that world is an illusion. They don't say it is an illusion. They say take it as real, but take it as impermanent. Take it as changing. And you decide whether you want a changing reality or an unchanging reality. Then any sensible person will say, I want an unchanging reality. I would be happy if I get only happiness and no misery. I don't want sorrow. I don't want a mixture of sorrow and happiness. So if you don't want that, and if somebody tells you that Prakriti means you have to accept both sorrow and happiness, do you want it? Some people say, I'm happy with it. As long as I get my quota of happiness, I don't mind. But he changes his mind. When he gets sorrow in his life, then he doesn't believe that Prakriti or this world is a good place. He starts criticizing. He starts complaining. So Swamiji says exactly why there is horror, so much of horror. Then you don't complain. If you say that I don't believe in a higher reality, I don't believe in the goal of yoga, that is moksha or nirvana or Purusha, attaining that Purusha, that unchanging reality full of bliss, Satchidananda. Okay, don't nobody asks you to believe. But then if you accept this world as true, this world is everything. I know there are a lot of miseries and I willingly accept it, then it is fine. But if somebody tells you that I can show you the way out of this misery, there is a place, there is a goal reaching which you can get rid of misery. This has not been told by one religious leader or prophet. It has been told immemorial times in the history. If you see the history of religion or history of spirituality, every prophet, every saint, or every philosopher tells you that there is a state, though his description of that final state varies. It varies from philosophy to philosophy, but more or less the goal is the same: freedom from sorrow. That is one thing which every one of us want. There is no sensible person in this universe who says, I live only to get sorrow. He may be tolerating sorrow, but someday or the other he hopes and he keeps on trying to reach a state where he can get rid of sorrow. This is a universal truth which Buddha also found, which yoga also, every school believes in this, that we don't want a mixture of happiness and sorrow. If there is a state and if there is a method which can give me permanent joy, bliss, and happiness, then I am ready to take the risk. And if somebody proves to me that this is the path, this is the logic, this is the experiment you have to do, and this is where you will reach. And because I have reached, Swami Vivekananda could say that I have experimented, I have found the path, and that's why I'm telling you. His Raj Yoga is not based on speculation. It is not just based on Patanjali. It is his own interpretation of Patanjali's yoga according to his own experiences, which he experienced in his own life. He also suffered like us. He also had his own joys, he had his own ideas. He quarreled with his master, he didn't accept. He had his suffocation, he had his doubts, so much so that he even doubted his guru. But the guru was very happy, he was very patient. He was he knew that this is a struggle which everybody who follows this path has to undergo. So he didn't mind. Sri Ramakrishna was infinitely patient, and it is his love which held Swami Vivekananda. It is because of his infinite patience, infinite compassion, infinite love. Swamiji says, though I did not disagree with many of the things which Sri Ramakrishna was telling me. For example, he told him, you have 18 powers and Keshav has one power. He thought, what a ridiculous statement to make. But Sri Ramakrishna was seeing that. He was experiencing that. He was seeing that. He said, this is what I see by the grace of Mother. So if he says, if I see something, then should I not tell you? If something is good for you, should I not tell you? Then Swami Vivekananda in the beginning, he doubted. Where is Keshav Chandra Sen? He is the founder of Brahmo Samaj. I am just a college student. And he is telling me that you have 18 such powers. So he started doubting, and Sri Ramakrishna did not stop him from doubting. He said, okay, you doubt, but I will show you, experimentally verify and show you one day that what I said was true. And finally, he was convinced when slowly he started realizing the truth of what Swami Sri Ramakrishna told him. So he spoke about it to the world, about his convictions, only after experiencing. That is the hallmark of a great guru. That is why we have to read books by people who have had that realization, and not by people who just write books for the sake of writing books. There's a huge difference. They base their writings, they base their speeches, they base everything based on their own experiences of these realizations. And when they have this realization, they come and speak to the world and say, see, this is the path, this is what I found, and this is the logical explanation. They just don't tell that I had that experience, so you will also have. They don't promise that, or they don't want you to be satisfied with that. They say why this is true, this is the reason, and why it is confirmed because of my experience. First of all, I will give you the reason, then I'll tell you the method, and then you practice it, and then finally you get that experience. So Swami Vivekananda here makes it very clear that however low a person may go, one day or the other he has to follow this method and go back to his original state of joy, peace, bliss, and freedom. Because he says there cannot be any other path, because that was our original state. We have degraded. We have come to the human level from God. Divinity was our birthright. Just as Bal Gangadhar Tilak said, freedom is my birthright. He told everybody in India that it is your birthright. It's not a question of whether it is right or wrong. It is your birthright and you have to fight for it and even die for it if necessary. So also, Swami Vivekananda says that freedom, that original state is my birthright. I was born, no doubt, to my biological parents, and I have come to a state where I find this life full of sorrow. Some lucky people find it full of sorrow and then they try to get rid of it. Some people are deluded when they get a little happiness, thinking that this is what I am seeking. Oh, this is what I was aspiring for, and I am happy with this. But then when he doesn't like the sorrow to come in his life, he says, I want a method by which I will remain in this world, I will remain in this dualistic world and get all the joys, exploit everybody, get all the joys, and then I wish that no karma or no sorrow will ever come to me. And that's an empty dream. It is like saying, how can you say that I will use this fire and it should not burn. If the fire cooks, it also burns. When you are playing with fire, you can't say I want the fire only to help me to cook. But if you are careless, it can burn, it can destroy. That is its nature, the way you use it. So also this world, Swami Vivekananda says, if this was the ideal state, then why there is so much of horror and misery? It's a very, very logical, scientific question he's asking. Okay, take it for granted that now because of your circumstances, you think that this world itself is a very happy place. You are happy now, okay, but just make sure that that is permanent. He says, I'm not saying as long as you think it is a happy place, I know you will not give it up. You enjoy it, there's no problem. But remember that one day Prakriti will show you. Prakriti herself has a mechanism, inbuilt mechanism, which shows you that life is not full of joy alone. That is her very nature, and that is her kindness also. It may appear strange that how can a mother teach you through sorrow, through pain? Um, Can she not give you the intelligence so that you learn through pleasure? No, because we are seeking joy, and as long as you get pleasure, you get some kind of sukha, you are on the mark of uh, prayer. When prayer approaches you, you feel, no, let me first enjoy this, let me see. Only when you see it is temporary, only when the child finds that the toy is not alluring enough, then it goes for higher toys. It becomes sad, it doesn't want to play anymore with this toy. But in the beginning, he perhaps say, let me see, perhaps this will give me joy. Then he takes up one toy, throws it, takes up another toy. That is how Prakriti plays. The Swami Vivekananda said, I would have created a better world. I would have, perhaps he was so disgusted with the sorrows that came to his life, in his life. He lost his father. So many things happened. And Thakur perhaps knew that he needs this kind of training so that he can give a very satisfactory explanation. He can teach the world. A person who has suffered misery can tell people with conviction that if you follow this, then you will get misery. He can caution you. A person who has burnt his fingers can tell others that don't do this. I know it will burn your fingers. So he had that conviction because he had to undergo this suffering. And for our sake, Swami Vivekananda passed through all these experiences, or you can say Prakriti made him pass through all these experiences so that he can play the role of a savior and tell us that, see, if you follow this, this is the consequence. I am telling you from my experience. So he is trying his level best in the beginning, in the introduction, where saying that uh, that which corrupts and that which degenerates a person, that which causes horror and misery, it cannot be a permanent state. It should not be a permanent state, and we should not be seeking happiness here in this world. If this world, if happiness was there in this world, then everything would have been peaceful, everything would have been free, everything would have been joyful. Everybody would have lived in harmony with each other. But since the state of the world is such that it cannot promise you permanent joy or permanent happiness. Temporary it can definitely promise, and that is what Prakriti does. So Swamiji says that shows you or that convinces you that it is worth trying if there is a state. If we have come back from that original joyful happy state, there should be some way in Prakriti. That is how the Shakti or the mother concept of mother comes. The whole concept of mother, God the compassionate mother, was just to tell Prakriti, Mother, please don't uh, make me play with these toys and then put me in sorrow and then take me out of that. I know I have learned my lesson. So if we surrender to Prakriti, if we surrender to Shakti, she alone shows the way. As the Rajoga, Swamiji will say that, like a loving mother, Prakriti takes you through some of the experiences. She knows you can't bear more than this. So sometimes she tests. Sometimes she just gives you a taste of sorrow, just so that you can appreciate that there is a path and you desire to go to that, on that path which will take you to a permanent happiness, a state of permanent happiness, a state of permanent joy, a state of permanent freedom. So he says the logic behind is that the world being so diabolical, just don't end with complaining about it. It's very easy to complain. It's easy to blame everybody around us. But then why are we here? Suppose the world is a, Swamiji argues that everybody wants to complain and say the world is a horrible place, the world is a horrible place, people are like that, people are like this. But he says if you are in that and if you don't want to leave that place, then what right you have to complain? Either you accept it, that I will accept the happiness and the sorrow, or you say no, then I will search for a solution if there is one. So that is why he says it is this world, this misery has a place only because it takes us to a state beyond misery. Then Swamiji puts another argument. If Prakriti, things are transient, they are not permanent, and the joy is also not permanent, then if there is sorrow also, then what is the purpose? Then he says they are just stepping stones to success. Failures or suffering are stepping stones to allow you to transcend them. When you suffer, you realize the transient nature much better. If there is joy, you hold on to the hope that this joy will remain for me. The joy of eating the sweet will remain to me. You will eat one sweet, you get joy. You see, this is heaven, this is happiness. Then take one more and then go on eating. Then you find that same sweet is not giving you joy anymore. It is giving you a disgusting feeling in the stomach. And then you say, no more sweets. Then they say, no, take one more sweet. Why don't you take, you said you got heavenly feeling when you took the first sweet. Yes, it gave me, but now somehow that feeling has gone. And I am no longer able to take even that good sweet. So also this happiness, when it comes in small bits and pieces. We get enamored of it, and then finally mother has to say that, see, this is a temporary thing. She will give a bit of sorrow and say that now you try to go beyond. Do you really want a state beyond sorrow? That's why Swamiji says the state, though it is lower, it is good as an experience because we have come down from a divine state and it is going to go back in a circle back to that divine state. He says everybody is moving in that direction. Whether I want it, he says everything in this universe moves in cycles. He gives a simple example. A tree sheds seeds. You are very sorry that a seed has fallen down and then it's just a waste. It gave such a nice fruit and it gave a nice flower or fruits and finally they have to fall. Then you say, oh, what a temporary thing has happened. It had such a, I wish that fruit was always there and we can always enjoy that fruit and see that flower blooming always. Why does it have to crumple and fall down? Because unless it does, it comes to a degenerate state. The seed goes back into the soil and then another tree comes. So all this degeneration, Swamiji says, we have to pass through this only in order to become regenerate again. Again there is fresh hope. So don't think that this play of Prakriti, that play of happiness and sorrow is bad. Swamiji says, just be a little patient. These experiences are just to make you go back to the original state which you enjoyed for long, but you came down because that is the rule, that is the nature of Prakriti. The whole world is moving in cycles. They go to a higher state, come down to a lower state, again go back to that higher state, again come back. So this cyclical existence is a fact which is universal. In nature you see that. There is rain, falls in the sea evaporates, the water goes back, goes to a higher state, it becomes clouds, again it falls down. And then if you take Prakriti to be real, then you have to accept this fact also, that a higher state is reached and then we come back to the lower state just to go back to the higher state. So that gives us tremendous hope that we need not be hopeless, we need not be always suffering like this. If we really feel that we have to get rid of suffering, then we will find out a way. It may take time. You may have to be very patient. Swamiji says, you have to put a seed into the ground, it disintegrates, dissolves, and after a time, a splendid tree comes out of it. Does it come suddenly? No, it will take time. So also when we start sadhana, we think, oh, we are doing the mantra. We want immediate results. We want things to happen immediately, and the whole life should be a smooth sailing for us. And when it doesn't happen, we get irritated. But it has to take root. It has to fall in on the soil. It has to be watered, carefully nurtured. The tree has to grow, and then when your tree grows, it will reach the goal. It will become a splendid tree. So, as we give this example of the seed, Swamiji says, everybody has to pass through this. And no matter how low a person goes, see, he gives tremendous hope. Even the lowest person, one day or the other, the sheer sorrow of life, the sheer experience of sorrow in life, he will make that person go upwards. That is such a positive and wonderful message of Swamiji. He says the very fact that you cannot go into further sorrow, you have come to the extreme of it, that will make you open your eyes, remove a covering from your eyes, remove the ignorance, and then you will strive. Suddenly you may get a guru, you may get a mantra, you may get some guidance from unknown places. People will come and help. That is how Mother's timing works. One has to believe in this. That is why Sri Ramakrishna makes an impassioned plea in the gospel. He said, you just believe in my mother. She is compassionate. See, he is not come. Sri Ramakrishna doesn't come to this earth. These people don't come to misguide us. They have seen the higher reality. They have come down to us. They have come to this degenerate world. And then they have shown us the way to go back to that regenerate state. They have passed through the whole cycle only for us. And they are not come to misguide us, to cheat us. And if we doubt, the loss is ours. That is why once when Swami Vivekananda, somebody was quarreling and arguing and arguing. The disciple was arguing. Then he got a little upset. Not upset. He just smilingly told her, see, madam, what I am and what I am telling is written on my brow or written on my forehead. If you can read it, the benefit is yours. If you can read it, the fruit will accrue to you. You will be the beneficiary. If you can't read, the loss is yours, not mine. I don't want to satisfy my ego that you should accept everything which I say. I just go on telling what I know and what I am convinced is the truth. If you have the intelligence to read it, you can read it on my forehead. I had to say what I said. I have said what I said, and I know it is true. But how much of it you want to take, how much of it convinces you, that I am leaving it to you. That is the benefit will be yours, not mine. I am nobody to tell you that you have to accept it. If you can see what is written on my forehead, you try to see it. That is what I have come to tell. So these leaders, these great prophets, when they write these books, they write with tremendous amount of conviction based on experience. It is like a Nobel laureate getting a Nobel Prize, and after the end of that endeavor, nobody doubts a Nobel laureate. He has worked hard to teach the world that this is the method and this is the discovery I made. Now there is no way that people can doubt him unless a superior person comes and shows that there is a higher theory. But he has to prove that. So also these prophets come in every age, tell you that this is the way to yoga, this is the best way to yoga, or this is the good way to yoga. They don't say other ways are wrong or bad, but they say this is one possible way. Those who are really liberal, they say this is one possible way. This is what I found was very easy. And Sri Ramakrishna came with a special mission, not to show his own way. He just came to show that all ways are valid if you are sincere. The prophets who came before, they also were valid. The prophets who will come in future, they are also valid, as long as that sincerity to know the truth is there. So that is what Swamiji says. The sooner we get out of this state, a degenerate state, the better for us. So each soul must undergo all these transformations to reach a place where there is no longer any transformation. There is only peace, there is bliss, because he has become one with his divine state. So that divinity to attain, there are certain methods and goals which we have to achieve. There are some intermediate goals also, that these are known as the steps. So Ashtanga Yoga means eightfold path. For our classification, he has divided it into the 8 paths which all of you know: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama. All these steps are very important because we consciously or unconsciously are passing through all these things. And it requires a tremendous patience to start from kindergarten, get into college, get into school, get into high school, get into college, get admission. Even if such a secular activity, you have to wait so long. Spiritual pursuit is also like that. You may have started at the kindergarten of religion and you can't suddenly expect to get a PhD. So Swamiji says, if you have the patience, if you follow these great masters, this eightfold path is open to you for inquiry, for testing, for practicing, and if you are lucky, if you have the grace of Prakriti or Mother, then your speed will be faster. There's no limit to the speed. There are many bright students who can attain this thing in a very short time. They can get a PhD at a very young age. Some people may take more time, but ultimately everybody gets that. So Swamiji says, then what should we do? If this world is not true, should we commit suicide? Should we say, this is a useless world, let me leave it? No, it's not the solution. That can never be the solution. Because by giving away the gross, we can't give away the subtle. The subtle will haunt us. We have to take up another gross. So that is not the way to get out of it. What is the way to get out of it? He says yoga teaches you. It's not by just rejecting the gross. You have to accept the gross. You have to accept asana. You have to accept yama niyama. You have to accept pranayama. And just don't neglect that. Because most of our problems, we think they are the problems of the mind, they are problems of the manomaya kosha, they are the problems of the vijnanamaya kosha, and we think they are all only spiritual problems, but we don't understand. Sometimes many of our ailments or many of our so-called suffocation and so-called distress or depression, some of the root causes are in simple things like health, like some chemical imbalance, like some wrong method of asana or wrong method of handling prana. Asana means not just yoga asana. I am talking of the wrong way, the way we treat our body. Would have been some error. So sometimes some of these yogis say, you go to the fundamentals. Maybe something is wrong with your physical health. You sort it out. You don't have to go to yoga to solve all your problems. You don't have to go to meditation and higher things. Some of the level can be solved at the level of yama and niyama. Some of the problems, according to Patanjali's yoga, can be solved at the level of asana. Some by good posture, by good exercise. Some prana by eating the right food, having the right attitude towards life, having a regulated life, doing everything in moderation, trying to be as happy as possible, trying to be content, trying not to be overtly ambitious. So these are all the different ways of conserving our prana. We have to use all these techniques. We have to have the support of the Annamaya Kosha. It is such an important thing. Just because that's why Thakur used to say that in Kali Yuga, this Annagata Prana. Our prana depends on the food we take. It depends on how we treat our body. So we can't neglect it. So you have to go step by step. Such a logical thing Swamiji is telling you. You just can't go into high school. You have to pass through the kindergarten of religion. So he says torturing ourselves or condemning the world is not the way to get out of this world. It will make the problem worse. Some people torture themselves. Some people think that too much of austerity I will do, and I will. That is also one of the baneful, the wrong attitudes in religion. that just by inflicting pain on oneself, on the physical body, or maybe denying oneself many things, you can reach the goal. No, Swamiji says that is not, or neither is condemning the world. We condemn everybody. We condemn the worldly people. We condemn this uh, sense objects. He said this is harming us. Too much of smoking is going on. Too much of drinking is going on. Too much of abuse is going on in the world, and we blame everybody. Then the yogis ask the question: who asked you to be part of that? Why do you blame everybody? That is the way of Prakriti. There are certain things which will behave in an animal way. There are animals, there are plants, but every human being has the freedom to behave as an animal or as a divine being. He says, who makes you take the wrong choice? Who is making it compulsory? So we have to pass through. But Swamiji says, then you can't avoid. You have to wade through this. You have to go step by step by asana, pranayama, finding out if some of our problems can be solved at the Annamaya Kosha level. Can we do it? Can we just by changing a few habits, simple habits, or changing the way we look at the world, making ourselves a little more content, a little more satisfied in whatever we get? Can we solve some of our problems? Or should we allow our ambitions, our jealousy, our anger, everything to overpower us and make ourselves miserable? Choice is ours. If we know that our anger, our jealousy, our many things are in fact affecting our body, our anxiety, our jealousy, our ego, there are so many things, Patanjali says, can be taken care of at a very, very rudimentary level of the body and the prana level. So, regulation of Annamaya Kosha, that is asana, and Yama Niyama, of course, because good actions will help you. A healthy attitude towards work, even if you hard work is never harmful for anybody. In fact, it gives you the right balance of Annamaya Kosha and the Pranamaya Kosha. It balances the prana. Sometimes there is excess of prana, and you don't know. It makes the mind restless because the prana wants some outlet. So if you don't do a what is yoga actually? Doing the karma that you are doing perfectly in a balanced way. If you use some of the prana, that prana won't trouble your mind, and then you would find that your mind is becoming increasingly difficult to control the mind. The simple reason is that the pranic balance has got disturbed. So if it cannot get an outlet through the body, if you don't give it enough work, enough exercise, enough yama, niyama, and all those things, if you don't follow, then it will attack the manomaya kosha. The excess prana has to work itself out. So it is a good thing to have a healthy mix of asana, of exercise, or some kind of physical, so that the physique also remains fit, and some healthy kind of meditation, healthy thinking, joyful thinking, uh, having a nice mix of wonderful things in nature. Some people have a tendency to always be light and joke and all. It's fine, jokes have their place, laughter has. You see, Thakur always used to laugh. He used to see the whole world as a circus. Swamiji also, sometimes in very serious mood, he used to sometimes tell his disciples, as he did in uh, near San Francisco when they were in the woods. He said, told one of his women disciples, "Don't you see?" She said, "This world is a very painful face," and she was making a very big face because she had some issues, some problems, and she expected Swamiji to teach her meditation to get rid of it. Then Swamiji gave her a wonderful attitude to practice. She says, "Don't you see this world is like a clown and we are all like clowns tumbling?" She was shocked. I said, "Why do you compare? I am serious. We are not clowns. We are not we are not in the midst of a circus." But Swamiji convinced her, and then finally she got convinced. Yes, we are like clowns. We are tumbling all the time for no reason, because we don't know how to handle our prana, we don't know how to handle our emotions, we don't know how to handle our simple things. And then we talk of nirvana, we talk of meditation and all those things. We have never stopped to analyze why this prana is causing a disturbance, why our minds are getting disturbed, why can't they obey us, why can't we think the right thoughts at the right time and be happy, why are these small depressions and suffocation and other things coming in our life, why is it not all smooth always? The very simple reason is you don't have to go to for a higher solution. Uh, you don't even have to practice the higher forms of meditation. You have to just find out what is it that is making you. Is there something wrong with the food you take, the way you uh, schedule your routine? There should be a healthy mix. There should not be too much of excess of anything. Too much of thinking, too much of worrying, too much of anxiety is not good. Now, in a while, just think this life is a circus, have a little joy. There should be place for everything. That's why you find all these great people, Swami Bhuteshananji, Swami Vireshwaranji. They were all, though they were 100% sincere and focused on their ideal, focused on their spiritual practices, when it came to the normal behavior, they were full of humor, they were full of jokes. They used to at their own expense, not by they did not intend to hurt others. I remember a joke, even at the last moment of his life, a few uh, days before he passed away, his body was struggling. He was at his age was 93 at that time, and uh, everybody naturally, when you go to a patient, you tell, no, no, you look much better, you are fine, everything is okay, and all those things. We tend to speak about that, but great people who are not attached or who don't worry too much because they know this is the nature of the body. You can't expect a body to be very healthy at the age of 93. So when one senior monk went and told Prabhu Maharaj when he was very sick, weak, and apparently lying, and towards the end of his life, he was lying on the bed. So somebody told him, "Oh, Swamiji, you look to be just to boost his spirits." Perhaps he thought, "Let me boost Swami Vireshwaranji's spirit," saying, "No, no, Maharaj, you look fine. You look fine." He said, "Then you see, instead of telling him his woes and telling him his problems. That is what old people normally do. The moment you say you look healthy, they will complain. They will make so many complaints. No, no, this is paining. You say this is problem with my neck, my head, my leg. So hundreds of problems, and they expect you to listen to everything. But you see how great spiritual people handle their problems. He took it so lightly and said, "Listen to a joke. You say my body is fine. At this age, you can't expect a body to be fine. But it is something like a car which a person wanted to purchase from a garage. He wanted a second-hand car. So he went in search because he could not afford to buy a new car. So he went in search of a second-hand car. And this was a joke told by Vireshwanji a few days before his passing away. You see how humorous he was, how lightly he took his pain and all the suffering which he had. That is a hallmark of a great spiritual person. So he said, you know how the condition of my body is? It is like that old car which was kept on display in the garage. And people who want a cheap car, they normally go to buy the second-hand cars. And the person who is in charge of the garage, naturally, he will try to sell his product by saying that the car is good, but he can't tell a lie. He can't say that old car is better than the new car. So he has to give some explanation. So they use very witty words, and they're very clever. And he said, "Is there any problem with any of the parts?" Then, then Vireshwaranji says that owner of that garage said, "Oh, the car is fine. The car is excellent. All the parts are equally good. You see, all the wheels are equally good. They are all equally good." What he didn't say was that they were equally bad. Not that one wheel was bad and the others were good. That would have been an honest appraisal. But he knew all the things would come out sooner or later. It would come out. So he said, no, all are equally good. He was telling the truth because they were equally bad actually. Whether you say it is equally bad or equally good, the truth remains. So he just managed to convince, and that fool, that person who came to buy, he bought that car. So Vireshwaranji says he took that car, and then suddenly, after driving a few miles, all the four wheels, normally one wheel, if it is defective, it comes out and then you have an accident. But this car was so bad that just as the owner had promised, the garage person had promised, the owner of the garage, all the wheels came out at the same time. So even in the midst of acute suffering, he was bedridden. He says, my condition is like that old car. Now when it gives way, all the parts will go, and then I will be, I mean, so you don't have to tell me that you look fine and you are fine, you are recovering and all those things. Means you come to the point, talk about something higher. This body has its dharma, it will follow its own course. And even in the midst, my point was that this this attitude which all our great souls, the great people who have realized the transitoriness of the world, they very, very carefully cultivate this attitude of taking or making light of the miseries that we have. Everybody has a misery. No, we don't need a fool to tell us that this life is full of misery. It has its own share of miseries, it has its own share of sorrows. So we don't want anybody to add more and more, say, oh, this life is miserable. There are so many negative people who go on telling we don't require. We want a solution, and one of the solutions is to dismiss it as a bad joke. That is what Vireshwaranji and even Bhuteshananji, whenever he used to say, how are you, how is your health, and all, he used to crack some, he had a wide stock of jokes. So he used to tell those jokes and say that, and behind those jokes was a great truth. But there's a way of telling those things. Sri Ramakrishna also, he used these parables and some very, very funny parables to show the futility. He didn't tell directly because people won't accept it. But if you tell in very graphically describing it through a parable, there is a chance that you will remember. For example, he wanted to show what it is to live in the world. So he just saw a camel somewhere eating thorny bushes. And then he gave such a graphic example that anybody who thinks of the joy of the world, the temporary joy of the world, if he creates that imagery in his mind, that Sri Ramakrishna once upon a time told this story, and he told it as a joke, and he told it in a very humorous way, but it conveyed its meaning. Was very powerful in what it wanted to convey. He said a camel thinks that the juice of a thorny bush is very tasty, but it doesn't realize that the taste is because of its own blood. It is sucking its own blood. It is scratching the roof of the mouth, and the whole mouth is getting hurt, and ultimately he will come to harm. But it is so hungry and so greedy that it goes on eating the bushes and doesn't mind and doesn't seem to care for the uh, wounds that are being created, and thinking that the blood that is coming. See, this is something which Thakur could imagine. He could see even a simple incident. He could convey such a deep and profound truth that whatever we enjoy in the world is like this chewing of uh, the thorny bushes, sweet in the beginning but then fatal in the end. So also Shreya and Preya, all these wonderful ideas which Yama gives Nachiketa, these are all told in the form of stories. These are told in the form of humor, day-to-day humor. So this humor serves two purposes. It tells you what is the purpose of our life in a very, very nice way, so that you don't you take it seriously, but at the same time don't shout and don't get depressed and don't complain and cry and just blame everybody else in the world for the misery, because you can't blame anybody. It is we who have made the wrong choices. Then we can't complain. If we have deliberately chosen to touch fire and to put our finger in the fire, then why should we complain? That why should some people leave the fire there? But if you know that the fire will burn, you have no business to put your finger inside that. We should give up that curiosity which will lead us to misery. So we have to be satisfied with whatever, content with whatever life offers to us, and negotiate or navigate our way in this world in a nice way. So that is what ultimately Swami Vivekananda is saying, that the sooner we are through this all this struggle, the better. But it should always be remembered that this is not the highest state. This world in which we are, he establishes very logically. He says this is not the highest state. It is definitely, there are higher things in life worth aspiring for. So he first wants to convince the readers of Raj Yoga through this wonderful passage that, remember, before the first requirement of undertaking a study of Raj Yoga is to understand that why we need this study, what will it gain for us, what is the price we have to pay. I just don't do sadhana to get nothing in the end. If somebody tells me you just do go on doing sadhana and don't bother about the result, Swamiji says it is like cheating him. You have to tell this is the step, this is the time that you will take. You have to undo your samskaras. You have to do so many things. You have to go back to that state. But that state exists. It is as real as all the worldly things, more real than the worldly things that you. And if you can put effort, you can. There are people who struggle day and night for these temporary achievements in the world. They struggle day and night. They struggle. They suffocate. They cause pain to themselves, cause pain to others, just to achieve some worldly goal, some worldly ambition, some worldly prosperity. But then Swamiji says, then why can't you do it if there are higher goals, not only promised but shown that they are achievable, that they are not only desirable but they are very much achievable, they are practical. And moreover, he doesn't end with that. He tells us there is a way, and at every step of your life, it can be a continuous joy if you know how to play. If you know that this world has to be taken not so seriously, if we consider that these are the things which is nothing like a circus where clowns are tumbling, and we are like one of those. If we don't if we are not careful, if we become part of that circus, so are we to be part of the circus? Are we to become clowns and make fool of ourselves and run after these ephemeral things? If we do like that, Swamiji says, as he told his Western disciple, that we are just running after the mirage, running after empty things, which but that conviction, once it comes, it gives a sadhaka great joy and makes his sadhana meaningful. It is troublesome, no doubt. Sadhana is never easy. Sadhana, the struggle of sadhana, but that struggle is worth it. We know for certain that whatever struggle we do, ultimately, if we maintain our patience, we persevere. That is the two great qualities which yoga asks: patience and perseverance. And there are some obstacles which Patanjali will discuss. He says one is lack of patience, impatience, or lack of perseverance. That can be a hindrance, because the moment we see that we don't get, it is like a child saying that I have studied up to high school, now I want my PhD. Nobody is going to give him a PhD. He has to have patience to go to the college, he has to do slowly things and enjoy the journey. He should enjoy his high school, he should enjoy his college, he should enjoy the process of applying for the PhD, and then finally when he gets the result, when he attains the goal, then it is of course joy. But on the way also, there's no reason why he should be morose or he should be struggling all the while. So that is what Swamiji says. So we have no right to say that this world is the best place. If there are some people who say that all this thing is humbug, then they have to prove that this state is much better. But no person has been able to prove that this world, because if he says, I can show you a path where there will be only happiness, no sorrow in the gross world, you can't show a single case where it has happened. Even Buddha's father tried very hard to show him only the delights and the joys of the world. He surrounded him with all the luxurious things. He shut him inside the prison wall of his palace, and he did not want his son to see the misery in the world outside. But someday or the other, when he came out, he saw misery, and that created a commotion. And he said, "No, no, no. There is no permanent joy in this world. So I will seek it." And then his pursuit for nirvana began. And after a lot of struggle, because only because of his ignorance, which his father had forced upon him, his father tried to delude him by showing him only the good things and promising him that only good things will come to you. Spirituality doesn't say that. That there will be a struggle, but according to Buddha, we have to follow the moderate path. That is what yoga also says. We have to have time for our sadhana, time for our leisure, time for a little bit of humor in life. If we do all these things, then we will definitely find this pursuit of yoga very interesting. So if there are some questions, now you can ask. We have a few minutes.
Swamiji, namaste.
Yes.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Just a minute. Yes, please. Yes. In the chat, some people have asked questions, but first I will answer yours. Then there are few questions in the chat. Okay, please tell me.
Thank you. Swamiji, in your talk, you said that we have to make right choices, which would imply that we can make conscious choices, and we control the outcome of those choices. But before, in one of your previous lectures, you said that not a grain of sand would move without God's will. So I'm trying to understand the contradiction between the two. Where are we actually making conscious choices?
Surrender to the Lord, then you will see that He will make us step in the right path. There's some noise coming. Can you just? I'll just. I heard your question. I'm just closing your mic. 1 minute. I'll just. Yes. So I think you are able to hear me. Now the thing is, these two things are not contradictory. Remember one thing, that when we not a single leaf moves without God's will. That is fine. But if we really believe in that, then you have to remember one thing: then God will never allow you to make a wrong choice. But unfortunately, because we don't believe that, we think we are wise enough to take our own choices. That's why we make wrong choices. That state which I referred to is a very high state. It is a high state which comes after a lot of sadhana. It's not a very natural thing to leave everything, all the decisions to God. It is a result of constant practice. So what happens is, when we leave everything to God, then you will find that you will be making lesser and lesser wrong choices in life. The more you depend on God, the more you think that He is taking the decision, and allow Him to take, or allowing her mother to take the decisions. If you really believe in that, then you will find that automatically the situation will be such. But unfortunately, we really sincerely don't believe in that, and we think we are wise enough to take our own decisions. We don't listen to God or God's inner voice, which keeps on telling us, don't do this, don't do this. And in spite of the scriptures telling us, in spite of prophets telling us, we don't follow that inner voice. So I think these things are very clear, that both are not contradictory. But if we have reached the state where we believe that nothing moves without the will of the Lord, then we will not make wrong choices. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you, Swamiji. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Now there is one question. Yes. 1 minute. I'll have to see the chat. Yeah, two questions. If we are part of spirit already, why do we descend? Is it a sort of movement? Are we instruments of this movement? A perfect movement that defines family, place, etc. And the second, what is the meaning of being part of it? Thakur said, for example, Baburam Maharaj was part of Sri Radha. It means when we choose our Ishta, because we already belong to the Ishta in the energy field or not. Yes, it's a very good question. Now, when you descend, just as incarnations descend for various reasons, there is not a single incarnation who has descended to this so-called degenerate world of Prakriti. He has come down with a choice. He is not bound, but he has come down to play a particular role. And he brings with him people like Baburam Maharaj, Swami Premanandji, who just have to play a role, who are not really bound by the world. There are very few exceptions. But what about the rest of us? Swamiji is talking of a general people in Raj Yoga. He says everybody, that is the way Prakriti runs in cycles. Just as you can't ask why does the tree drop the seed? The seed has to fall, seed has to germinate, it becomes another tree. So unless the seed degenerates, unless the fruit falls, unless the seed degenerates, gets into the soil, and some water makes it grow into a big tree, it won't grow. So the cyclical, there is no reason, explanation for why it happens, but this is what happens. This is the state of the world. This is how Prakriti works. Prakriti always moves in cycles. That's why when you say, why does gravity pull things down? You can't ask this question. This is what an observed phenomena in science, and we have to believe that. So that is why we have to take it, the cyclical nature of the world, especially Prakriti, not the Purusha. Prakriti is having the cyclical nature, and we come down from Purusha through Parama Prakriti. We get involved in Prakriti, but not for long. Thankfully, it is not a permanent state. However degenerate an animal becomes or a man becomes, someday or the other, according to Swamiji, the circle will change and he will go back to the original state from where he came, because that is his aspiration. That is what he wants. He doesn't want this play to go on endlessly. He somehow says, let me find out a way to get rid of this. Okay. So okay. Now the other question is, yeah, you said we need a balance. Is everyone if everyone balances food, is balance of food in exercise different? How do we find this balance to becoming sattvic as such? Some sampradayas are black and white and say don't eat this food and don't gamble, and how do you know what is right? Now you see, it is not a question of sampradaya. That which agrees with you, that which keeps you highly sattvic. You know the nature of tamas, you know the nature of rajas, you know the nature of sattva. So all our scriptures are unequivocally telling those foods, those exercises which make you more sattvic, you follow. If yoga makes some food may agree. So it is not a fixed thing. Don't eat this food. Of course, there are generalizations like stale food, old food, recooked or reheated food, the food that is considered to be tamasic, whereas fresh fruits, things which have a lot of prana in them. So these are very common sense observations. We know there is dietitians can guide you which foods are wholesome, which foods are healthy. So it doesn't have to depend on sampradaya. Sampradaya just give you guidelines based on some historical reason or the geographical area from where they come. Some people don't eat vegetarian food or non-vegetarian food. Some people. So there is no hard and fast rule, because if you say sampradaya, then everybody will give you contradictory advice. Some people will say there's no harm in eating non-vegetarian food as long as you eat in the right quantity or right proportion. And some people say there's no harm, you should be a vegan, you should not take this, you should take. So those things are not very important. Food becomes important at the lower levels, but at the higher levels, as you said, exercise is important, or right living more than exercise. Just exercise can make you rajasic also. If you overdo exercise, it will make you rajasic. It will make you restless for taking on somebody in a fight. People exercise, develop their muscles, then they are ready to box anybody who comes in their way. So even exercise, if it is done without any discrimination, it can increase rajas, it can increase, there's no guarantee that it will increase sattva. So you have to be balanced in that respect. Just do what keeps you pleasant, which keeps you smiling, which keeps you joyful, as far as possible. Not that you will never become depressed, you will never become suffocated, you will never become. These things will come because when tamas predominates, these things will come. But very often it is the preponderance of tamas that is responsible for our mental state. We can easily come out of it. That's why we should not panic. Just see that there is some wrong in the food. Maybe there is some wrong in the behavior. There is something wrong in how you are looking at life. You need some more rest perhaps, or you are resting more than necessary. So you have to see, then the balance depends on individual. If he is very hard working, then he needs rest. If he is always resting, then he needs exercises. So I can't say, or anybody can't say how much of exercise you need. That depends on your profession, your liking, your dislike, your sampradaya, if you believe in any sampradaya. The best thing is to get out of these sampradayas. Everybody should plan according to what agrees with him and not be bound by certain rigid rules. Some rules may not apply to you in your particular case. You may be better off by eating certain things which are prohibited by your sampradaya. So you have to come out of the sampradaya. That's why Swami Vivekananda very famously said, it is good to be born in a church, but you should not die in a church. You have to somehow come out of that sampradaya which limits you. You have to make sensible choices based on what works for you. Huh? Okay, that is the thumb rule. Okay, that is the last question I will answer. How can we handle the pull of the samskaras which lead us to seek pleasure from body-mind complex? Now, that is a long process. That is actually what yoga will teach us. I will not go into elaborate discussion now because handling of samskaras and the karana sharira and reducing its effect is the whole topic of Raj Yoga. We are going to discuss it in the future. So it's good you anticipated this question, question, and you have asked what is the role of samskaras. In fact, everything is based on how we handle the samskaras. But right now I'm not entering into a discussion because then I'll have to discuss the whole of Patanjali's yoga. Patanjali begins with the idea, yoga has chitta vritti nirodha. It starts from the very idea that these samskaras have to be handled at the root level, at the karana sharira level. But unfortunately, we want everything in a flash, everything very quickly. We want nirvana fast, we want peace fast. We don't realize that the samskaras have to be pulled like the weeds in the garden. You have to remove that weed. You just can't say that I will burn all the weeds and finish it in one day. It doesn't happen. The weeds don't, they are too deep. The roots are deep. So you have to simply pluck them out from the ground. So how to do that, we will discuss. That is affecting our body-mind complex, no doubt. That is why we suffer. But they are the causes. But solution, we will leave it for a future date. And finally, does the Ishta choose us? Yes, obviously. Ishta chooses everybody. And if we are lucky enough to be chosen by an Ishta, and if we are lucky enough to choose an Ishta for ourselves, then it is the grace of the Ishta that he chose us, and that is how it works. Yes, it's absolutely true. Otherwise, why will some people be attracted to certain ishtas or certain deities or certain gods or certain religion, certain spiritual practices? It's just the past samskaras. So you may say it is past samskaras, or you may say the ishta has chosen us. In either way, the answer is correct. Okay. Okay, I take your leave. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Swami.
Thank you, Swami. Ram Maharaj.
Namaste.
Ram Maharaj. Namaste.